I want to tell you about the summer I started paying attention. Not that I hadn't been paying attention before. I'd spent 31 years as a mid-level compliance officer at a regional insurance firm in Columbus, Ohio. Paying attention was the whole job. Reading what was written between the lines of a policy document, noticing when a number didn't quite add up, watching for the thing that was almost right but wasn't. But that summer, the summer I turned 58, I started paying attention to my own life in a way I hadn't thought necessary. It started with the camera. My daughter Renee had installed it the previous October, right after I mentioned I'd been having trouble sleeping. She ordered one of those mid-range doorbell cameras. Nothing fancy, just a small white device above my front door, and set it up on a Saturday afternoon while I made lunch. She showed me the app before she left, told me the motion alerts would give me peace of mind. For 6 months, she was right. The mail carrier. The occasional raccoon at 2 in the morning. Once, a neighbour's dog that had gotten loose and sat on my porch for 40 minutes before anyone came looking. I barely opened the app. Then, on the 14th of June, I woke up to an alert I didn't recognise. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m. The footage showed my front porch. Empty. The motion sensor had triggered, but nothing was on screen. No person, no animal, no leaf blown across the field of view. The street lamp at the end of my block cast its usual orange circle on the pavement, and the neighbourhood was still and dark in the way that neighbourhoods are at that hour when nothing is wrong. I sat at my kitchen table with my first cup of coffee and watched the clip 3 times. Then I set my phone down and went to get ready for work. At the time, I didn't think much of it. At the time, I filed it in the same mental drawer where I keep things that are probably nothing. The second alert came the following night. Same time, 2:17 a.m., empty porch. But this time, in the audio faint, layered under the ambient hum of the street, there was something. A sound like a heel on dry concrete. 1 step. Then, silence. I replayed it 4 times, maybe 5. I told myself it was the neighbour's sprinkler triggering at an odd hour, or the bus on the boulevard 2 streets over, its vibration travelling through the ground. I told myself a lot of things that week. By the 4th consecutive night, I stopped telling myself things and started writing them down. That is something I have done for most of my adult life when something doesn't sit right. I don't panic. I don't make phone calls. I might later regret. I get a legal pad. I start a log. Date, time, observation, action taken. It is not a dramatic process. It is a very quiet one. But I have learned, across 3 decades of compliance work, that the quiet process is the one that holds up. Some people mistake silence for permission. I have never made that mistake. But I had, perhaps, been too quiet about the wrong things for too long. That summer was when I began to correct that. The log was where it started. Let me tell you about where I live. My house is a 1,962 ranch on a quiet street in the Clintonville neighborhood of Columbus. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a detached garage I use mostly for storage. I've lived there 22 years. I bought out my ex-husband's share in the divorce settlement 4 years ago, and the deed transferred to my name alone shortly after. I mention the deed because it becomes important. My neighbor to the left is a retired postal worker named Gerald. To the right is a rental property. It had turned over twice in the past 18 months. First, a young couple who lasted about 8 months. Then a single man in his late 30s who moved in the previous November. His name was Dennis Farwell. The first time I saw him clearly was a grey Sunday in December. I was putting ice melt on my front walk after a light freeze. He was standing on his porch in a fleece jacket, looking at the street. He waved when he caught my eye. I waved back. He held the wave a beat too long. I noted it, said nothing, filed it away. The second thing I want to tell you about is my divorce. My ex-husband, I'll call him R, is a real estate attorney. We were married 19 years. The separation was civil in the way separations are civil when both parties are too tired to fight about everything. We agreed on most things. The house, the retirement accounts, the car. There was one account we did not agree on, a brokerage account, R, had established before we married, but which, under Ohio law, had become marital property through years of commingling joint contributions, joint tax filings, assets moving in and out of it during the course of our marriage. The value, when we finally got a proper accounting done, was not a small number. R did not want to split it. His attorney argued it had remained separate. My attorney disagreed. We had been in that specific argument for several months when the camera started recording at 2:17 a.m. By the end of the second week, I had 9 entries in my log. The time never varied by more than 2 minutes. Always 2:15 to 2:19. Always the same empty porch. Several of the recordings had audio not identifiable sounds, exactly, but sounds with a shape, a presence. The kind of thing you can hear clearly when you listen, with headphones at higher volume in a quiet room. I had started something else by then, too. Something small that I want to mention because it becomes relevant later. I had begun checking my home network. Not for any specific reason. Call it the habit of someone who spent 30 years looking for the thing that was slightly out of place. I had pulled up the list of connected devices on my router and written down every one. There were 11 devices. I knew 10 of them. The 11th had a name that was just a string of numbers and letters. A MAC address, I wrote in my log. Unknown. First appeared, as best I could tell from the router's history sometime in November. I did not know what that meant yet. I wrote it down anyway. Date, time, observation. The action taken column stayed blank for now, but I was going to fill it in. I want to tell you one more thing before I tell you what happened next. My mother was a practical woman, a bookkeeper for most of her working life. She used to say, and I heard her say it more than once when I was young, that the most dangerous assumption a person can make is that being watched means being understood. I thought about that a lot that summer. Because someone was watching. I was becoming more certain of that. But they had made a significant miscalculation. They had assumed I wouldn't notice. Patricia Okonkwo's office was in a plain brick building near Ohio State, shared with a tax prep service and a physical therapist. She had done contract work for my firm twice before and came with a recommendation I trusted. Her conference table was covered in cords and open laptop screens, and she offered me water when I arrived and asked if I minded if she kept working while we talked. I didn't mind. I had exported 3 weeks of camera footage onto a thumb drive and printed a clean copy of my network device log, the one with the unknown MAC address highlighted. I handed both across the table without explaining what I thought they meant. I wanted her read, not mine confirmed. She was quiet for about 4 minutes. "This camera is triggering on a schedule," she said. I asked what that meant. She explained it the way people with genuine expertise explain things to people who know how to listen, without shortcuts, without condescension. My camera model's motion detection could be triggered not just by physical movement, but by certain frequencies of wireless signal activity within close range. Someone cycling a specific type of transmitter on and off at a regular interval could, in theory, cause the camera to log an alert at the same time every night. How close would they need to be? I asked. 30 feet, she said. Maybe less, depending on output. Then I slid the network log across the table and pointed to the highlighted line. She looked at it for a moment. Then she looked up at me. "How long has this been on your network?" "Since November," I said. "As far as I can tell." The room got quiet in a specific way. Not the quiet of nothing happening. The quiet of someone choosing their next words carefully. "This isn't a household device," she said. This MAC address prefix belongs to a class of equipment used in network monitoring applications, passive observation tools, the kind of thing that, if someone attached it to your modem, could log your network traffic, browsing, login activity, financial portals. I looked at the table for a moment. I need you to understand what I'm telling you, Patricia said. I'm not telling you someone is actively watching you in real time. I'm telling you there is an unexplained device on your network that should not be there, and it has been there for approximately 7 months. I wrote that down. What do I do? I asked. That depends, she said, on what you think it's connected to. I told her briefly, without editorializing about the brokerage account, about the fact that a real estate attorney in the middle of a contested settlement would have both the technical contacts and the professional motivation to understand what someone was spending money on, what accounts they were accessing, whether there was any financial pressure that could be used as leverage at a negotiating table. Patricia listened, without expression. When I finished, she said, "You need to call your attorney, today, before you change anything on that network." She was not wrong. I called Sharon Adeyemi from the parking lot. Sharon's first instruction was, "Do nothing differently. Don't change the network password. Don't confront the neighbor. Don't alter your routine. Go home, make dinner, act as though you found nothing." She needed a few days to move some things into position. I drove home. Dennis Farwell's truck was in his driveway. I made pasta. I watched the evening news. I went to bed. At 2:17 a.m., the camera triggered. I lay in the dark, watched the notification appear on my phone, and did not respond to it. Sharon called me at work 3 days later. She had done some digging. Ours firm had, in recent years, appeared on the opposing side of several asset valuation disputes, in which the losing party had later alleged improper access to financial records. Nothing that had resulted in formal sanctions, nothing that had been proven, but a pattern that Sharon described, with careful understatement, as noteworthy. She had also confirmed, through a contact at a title insurance company she worked with regularly, that R had recently initiated a lien verification search on my home address. "What does that tell him?" I asked. "Whether you've borrowed against the house? Whether there's financial stress he could use as leverage? Whether you're in a position where a drawn-out settlement hurts you more than it hurts him?" I was quiet for a moment. "He was mapping me," I said. "It looks that way," Sharon said. She told me she was filing an emergency motion to compel a full audit of all marital assets before any further settlement discussions could proceed. The grounds: potential financial misconduct during a pending proceeding. "And the device?" I asked. "I've already spoken to a cybersecurity attorney," she said. "He's reviewed Patricia's initial findings, and he wants her written report as soon as it's ready. There's enough here to support a formal request for investigation." She asked me one more question before she let me go. "Has anything changed with the neighbor? Anything at all?" That was the question that brought Gerald into it. Gerald, my neighbor to the left, the retired postal worker, had been on his street longer than almost anyone. He noticed things the way people notice things, when they've lived somewhere long enough that anything new reads as slightly wrong. I knocked on his door that evening. He invited me in and offered me coffee, and I told him carefully, not dramatically, that I had some concerns about the rental property next door, and I was wondering if he'd observed anything unusual in recent months. He was quiet for a moment. Then he went to his kitchen and came back with a small spiral notebook. He had seen Dennis Farwell in my backyard twice, once near the back gate in late April, once near the utility box on the side of my house in early May. He'd thought both times it was a fence line issue and hadn't wanted to be the kind of neighbor who assumed the worst. He had also, on a Thursday night about 6 weeks prior, written down the plate number of a car he didn't recognize, parked in front of my house at 2 in the morning. Gerald kept his own log. I looked at the plate number. I wrote it in mine. I passed it to Sharon the next morning. She called me back by noon. The car was a rental, paid for on a credit card linked to a Shell LLC. The registered agent for that LLC was a paralegal at Ar's firm. I was sitting at my kitchen table when Sharon read me that. I had my coffee. I had my legal pad. I wrote it down in the same handwriting I use for everything else. That's when everything changed. Not in the room, not dramatically, but in the column I had been keeping labelled "Action Taken." That column was about to get very full. Sharon filed the emergency motion on a Tuesday morning. By Thursday, Ara's attorney had called. He used the word "reconsider" 4 times in a 12-minute conversation, according to Sharon. As in, Ar's team would like to reconsider their position on the brokerage account timeline. They'd like to reconsider certain procedural objections they had been raising. They were open to reconsidering the overall settlement structure if a mutually agreeable framework could be established quickly. Sharon told me this over the phone that evening. Her tone was measured, but I've worked with her long enough to hear what's underneath measured. He wasn't expecting that answer, she said, meaning the answer the motion had effectively delivered. The answer that arrived in the form of official documentation before his team had time to adjust their position. The compliance inquiry notice from the state bar reached Ar's firm on the following Wednesday. His attorney called Sharon again by that afternoon. Meanwhile, Patricia had completed her written report. 14 pages, photographs of the device, network traffic logs covering 7 months. A technical analysis of the MAC address and its device classification, a documented timeline correlating the camera's 2:17 a.m. alerts with spikes in the transmitter's logged activity. The report went to 3 places: Sharon's files, the cybersecurity attorney, and my own. I printed my copy on a Tuesday evening and read it at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. I want to tell you something about that moment, reading a 14-page technical document that described, in precise language, the specific way in which someone had spent 7 months attempting to monitor my financial life without my knowledge. I wasn't angry, exactly. I was something quieter than angry, something more specific. I was done being the one who assumed the best. Dennis Farwell began moving boxes to his truck that Friday. He was gone by the following weekend. He did not say goodbye. I did not go out to wave. The settlement was finalized on the 3rd Tuesday of September. The brokerage account was divided according to the Ohio standard for commingled marital assets. My portion was transferred to an account in my name alone, at an institution R had no prior relationship with. Sharon's office handled every line of documentation. Patricia returned the following week to conduct a full sweep of my home network. She found the device a compact transmitter, smaller than a deck of cards attached to the back of my cable modem in the hallway near the front door. She removed it. She documented it. Photographs, serial number, chain of custody notation. I had a new modem installed, new router, new passwords on everything. I had a locksmith change the deadbolt on the front door. I slept through the night for the first time in months. The camera still records occasionally. A real raccoon now, the one who has apparently claimed my recycling bin as his own. A fox that appeared one October evening and sat on my front steps for 11 full minutes, completely unhurried, as though it had nowhere better to be. I check the app in the mornings with my coffee. Not out of fear, out of habit. And because I have come to believe, more firmly than I ever had before, that the habit of attention is not a burden. It is a form of protection, quiet, portable, and entirely your own. The systems that exist to protect us, legal ones, financial ones, the simple procedural act of writing something down and dating it, those systems work when you engage them. When you stay calm enough to use them, when you do not allow someone else's confidence in your silence to become their strategy, Some people will misread patience as passivity. They will look at a woman who keeps a legal pad and a careful handwriting and assume she has not noticed. They will assume that what has not been said has not been seen. They are almost never prepared for what comes next. I am still in the same house, same kitchen table, same morning light through the same window. I am not the same person I was the summer. The camera started recording at 2:17 a.m., not because that experience broke something, but because it clarified something I had always known and had perhaps been too polite to fully use. I know what attention is worth now. I know what a dated entry in a spiral notebook can become when the right person reads it in the right room at the right moment. Escrow doesn't recognize assumptions. Courts don't reward silence. And the people who count on your patience running out before theirs does have very rarely met someone who learned to be patient on purpose. If stories about quiet persistence and the slow machinery of accountability resonate with you, the kind of stories where nothing explodes, but everything resolves, you're welcome to stay. There are more of them, and the people in them almost always look, at first glance, like someone no one was expecting to matter.